That was Keith. So I was 2 when I got my big brother. I don't remember when he arrived. He was 3. But he remembered, and he told me that he thought he was going to be an only child. And he was very disappointed. He said, "Bummer, I got this little sister." But that didn't last long. We did become best buddies. And I do remember a year or 2 later when I could, when I had some memory, I felt like I had received a big present, a big brother. And we soon became very best friends. I can remember when we first were old enough to, make a list for Christmas. That, he was always thinking, he'd say, well, we'll do it together because we'll both pick something that we both like so that we could share it. And we did. And it worked out well until he convinced me to get the chemistry set that he made a big mess with, and it got taken away from us. So then after that, I thought, you know what, you're on your own. I'm getting my own thing. When we were 6 and 7, the babies were born, Derek and Darlene. And I can remember nobody on the street had seen twins before. And my mom and dad bought a stroller for twins. But back in those days, they weren't one baby behind each other. They were a stroller that went across, so it took up the whole sidewalk. And all the kids on the street wanted in on that. Can we just push the babies? So Keith thought, you know what, let's just charge them a nickel. And, they can push the baby up the street as far as Springs and back, which was about 13 ounces up. And we did that. And we made, what we thought was, well, it was a lot of money in our day. But anyway, we got caught. We had to give all the money. So, that was the end of that. So we in elementary school, so he was a year ahead of me. So he started to ask for a dog. We always had cats. But my mom had been bitten by a dog, so, she said no dogs. But he persevered. He just, he was so hopeful. So for probably 6 or 7 months, every week or so, he'd bring home a dog. And it would be, on a lead that was his belt or a piece of rope he had put in his pocket. And he would say, I found this stray dog. And Mom would say, Keith, you take that dog right back to the yard you got it from because you stole it. Which was true. He did steal it. Anyway, we didn't get a dog. So he was always, up to something. So he gave that up, and then he moved on to guitars. He decided he wanted to learn to play guitar. So of course, they got him guitar lessons, and I was pretty excited. I thought we were going to have a musician in the family. And I've listened to him in this room. Hang down your head, Tom Dooley. He had to play that over and over and over. And but I thought, you know what? He's going to get really good. He's excited about this. So I went in one day after school, and there he is. He's got a hacksaw, some tools he got out of the basement, and he's got a hole cut in his guitar. I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm going to turn it into an electric guitar. So, of course, that did not happen. And then Mom and Dad found out, and that was the end of the guitar lessons. And, I did not get a musician. I did, however, get a singer. He and his buddies put a band together. We were in junior high school. They were awesome, and he was the lead singer. And, they played at elementary schools for our sock hops, and, the kids would, little girls would scream like they were really quite something, but it didn't last. He moved on to other things. So his brother, Newman, who lived with us, he wore glasses. He had black rimmed glasses. They were quite nice. And Newman was always doing this with push them up on his nose, and he thought that was really cool. So now, I did not find out about this until we grew up. He didn't tell us so. But he wanted glasses so bad, he told Mom and Dad he couldn't see well. So They took him, and of course he lied about what he could see, and he got himself a nice pair of Blackburn glasses. And I just recently came across a class picture. There he is, pleased as punch, sitting in the group in grade 3 with his glasses on. He said, he kept pestering. He said, I couldn't see a damn thing, Sharon. I knew Mom and Dad spent good money on that, so I couldn't let them know. So, but eventually, he broke them because he wanted to get rid of them. So he broke them, he buried them in the backyard. I suspect they're still there, 3628 Barrington Street. And he then, of course, Mom took him to get his eyes tested again, and lo and behold, he didn't need them anymore. I can recall when we told Mom, Joanne was there, she didn't find it all that amusing having spent all that money on glasses. Anyway, so then he moved on to mini bikes. He wanted a mini bike so bad. And so of course, Dad said if you save your money, you can get a mini bike. So he got a mini bike, and of course the rules of the road were you could not take that on the road. Well, you know where that went. So he'd be out, we'd be, trucking around, we'd be running after him, he'd be doing wheelies and stuff. And of course the police came. He tried to outrun the police. I'll never forget it. There's the police slowly going down the street with their car, and Keith is, ahead of them. Vroom, vroom. So that was the end of the mini bike. So everything he got his hands on, he would take it apart to see if it worked, or what it was made of. But of course, in those days, he didn't really have an interest in putting it back together. So Dad was always going behind him, putting together a clock he had taken apart. And anyway, he was an amazing brother. He saved my life. We were swimming one time, and we never told my mother or father that for years because we wouldn't have been able to go swimming, but I did. I had swam too far, but he got me. And when I was struggling in my late teens, I flew to BC, and Mom and Dad gave me a ticket. I came out, and Joanne and Keith looked after me and kind of helped me get things back together. And later in my life, when my dad died, I called Keith often because he replaced our father. He had so much wisdom, and he would give me the advice I needed. I called him once when he was living in Ontario, and when I came out, I better call him, Mom, and tell him. So I called him. I said, Keith, I just need to tell you that I'm gay. And he said, oh, thank God, he said. Up here in Ontario, it's really cool to have somebody in your family who's gay. He said, and I've been lying to everyone. Anyway, he was my heart and soul. I won the lottery when I got my big brother. I love you, and I miss you so much, Keith.